Welcome to Powered Up, the podcast connecting industry leading voices who are energising the future. Today, I'm joined with Randal Smith, a chartered engineer who's led the Jaguar I-PACE programme, driven electrification at Jaguar Land Rover, and scaled EV charging and renewable energy solutions across startups and consultancy. Randal, welcome to the Powered Up podcast.
Thank you very much for having me, Amelia. Great to be here.
So, to get straight into it, you've been in this space since before EVs were mainstream. Where do you think we are right now in the EV and renewables transition?
I think it's a growing industry. It's obviously EVs have been around for 200 years, but it's only in the last sort of 10 to 15 years that things have started to come to the forefront because of the focus on greenhouse gases, climate change, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's an exciting time to be in the industry. There's a lot more EVs coming onto the market now, so there's a lot more choice. You've got the Chinese OEMs coming over, and they're offering a lot more choice at a cheaper price as well. So yeah, we've still got a long way to come. We're in that transition phase at the moment, so it's not going to happen overnight. If you look at something like the UK, there's about 34 million cars out on the roads, of which 1.6 million are EVs. So still a long way to go.
Wow. Yeah. I actually didn't realise there was that many in the
Yes,
market
a
as
few.
of yet, so it's still quite a few. Where do you think we are right now in terms of the momentum? So what's driving EVs in the market?
I think the one of the challenges with EV take up at the moment is people are naturally resistant to change. They don't want to change. They want to maintain the status quo of what they're familiar with. So
Hmm.
many people will hang on to their gas cars, their petrol cars or diesel cars forevermore, oblivious to the damage that the emissions are causing to the environment and to people's health. But what you find is that once people have stepped into that EV arena, there's about various studies have proven that about 95% don't want to go back to a petrol or diesel car because they
Hmm.
suddenly realize that it's a lot cheaper to run an EV. For example, I can do 40 miles in my EV for 70p, but to do that in a diesel or petrol car is about £5.50 to do the same distance. And it's a lot more fun, a lot easier to drive. So once people make that step and transition, it's great. It's just helping them to make that step. I think the big problem we have at the moment is there's a huge amount of negativity against EVs, driven by social media. And there's so much misinformation out there about EVs, such that in February last year, in 2024, the Climate Change Committee in the UK, because the UK seems to have a particular problem with it, wrote a report to the government that said the negativity against EVs was now so widespread and so ingrained in so many people, and that generated a serious threat to the automotive industry. So yeah, we've got particular challenges ahead of us, but
Yeah.
we're slowly sort of tackling it and making our way.
I think whatever industry you're in, there's always going to be some sort of backlash from
Oh,
social
yeah,
media that's going to generate the hate and the negative comments. But
yeah,
I think the stats are quite clear how EVs progressed over the last few years.
yeah. We've got year-on-year growth with EVs, and the trouble is, a lot of the negativity is based on misinformation. The batteries are always exploding or whatever.
Hmm.
And totally false. And then when somebody in the industry proves the person is incorrect, they'll just say, well, that's the government trying to cover up to protect the industry. Well, it's not quite the case. But there you go. We just have to keep challenging
Well,
and keep pushing forward.
keep pushing forward. Absolutely. And one of your career highlights was leading the Jaguar I-PACE program. So that was a huge pioneering moment for EVs. What lessons did you take from that project that are still relevant today?
I think the Jaguar I-PACE, when I was on it, was the first fully electric vehicle from a premium OEM, premium car manufacturer,
Hmm.
in JLR, and it was really cutting edge stuff. It was the first one that we were doing in JLR, so we were cutting new ground as we were developing it. And we had to develop the battery and the car itself, and I was leading sort of 250 people across 2 countries to take that from concept through to final production. I think the some of the lessons I learned was, one, to keep everybody informed of what we were doing and how fabulous it was going to be in the EV. Because a lot of people, they just had the design crews going from car to car to car, but didn't really appreciate the bigger picture. And one of the things I learned from my military leadership training was to keep people informed of the bigger picture, why we were doing it, why your piece there that you're designing is going to fit into the bigger picture of the car.
Hmm.
And the other thing is to be bold, because we had to build the car from the ground up. It was a new venture, a new concept that we put together. And, progress is only made by taking risks. Otherwise, we'd all still be living in the Stone Ages and not traveling any faster than a brisk walking pace.
Yeah,
So Jaguar Land Rover at the time were bold, taking that risk and taking that step forward to design this new car concept. And as it was, the car went on to win World Car of the Year in 2019 and 90 international awards,
it's
and was
fantastic.
seen as a great success.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of an overarching signal to the renewable industry as a whole is to be bold with the projects, the speed, the delivery, not
Exactly.
just necessarily within EVs, but across the sector as a whole. But obviously, talking about renewables, EVs aren't any longer just a vehicle. Like with smart charging and vehicle to grid technology, they're becoming part of the energy system. So, how close are we to that as a reality?
I think it's an interesting one at the moment, because the thing with EVs at the moment is it's a transition and not a cliff edge.
Hmm.
A lot of people will try and slate it, and they'll say, if everyone switched to EVs overnight, then you'll collapse the grid. But the National Grid did a survey back in 2022 that said if 80% of the population switched to EVs overnight, the resulting load on the grid would only be about 10%, which is well within capability for the grid. And the other thing you've got to bear in mind is everybody comes up with this negativity and says the grid's going to collapse when we all plug in. Well, we all do different mileages and we all drive different styles. We don't all go to the fuel station at the same time now. So why should it be any different with EVs? And the other thing with EVs is when you plug them in, we now have a lot of smart chargers, which will balance the load of the car and the local supply and the grid and everything else to make sure that nothing's overloaded. So there's a lot of sort of safety systems in to make sure that your car is charged safely and, to the maximum load it can take.
Hmm.
Um, the other technology I think that's building up nicely at the moment is a thing called V2G, which is vehicle to grid, or V2H, V2 home, or V2X you'll hear as V2 anything else. And that is effectively using the battery of the car when it's outside your home to power your home, V2X, or to feed back into the grid, or to power a barbecue if you're on a picnic site or something, V2X.
Wow. Yeah.
So you can start doing that. And that's a technology that's starting to grow now, that bidirectional charging. And it kind of makes sense, because if you think if you've got a home storage battery to link in with a solar system, your
Hmm.
home storage battery is probably about 10 kilowatt per hour, 10 kilowatts per hour. And an EV battery, an average one, is about sort of 50, 60 kilowatts, and a long range will go out to maybe 100 kilowatt hours. So you've got a massive battery there that can power your home, and then you can charge it cheaply overnight if you're on a dual rate tariff. So that is a growing area where it starts making sense to use the battery on the car if it's parked outside all day to
Hmm.
power that in. And even at night, when you plug it in to charge overnight on a cheaper rate, you can also feed that back into the grid, which will go into grid storage batteries. And
Yeah.
again, that they're used to smooth out the peaks in the grid during the day and all the peak usages.
Yeah, it's insane because somebody that might not necessarily be in the sector, they might see an EV vehicle just as it is. And until having these discussions more recently, I never knew you'd be able to power a barbecue using the battery of your
Yeah.
car.
You look at
And
the
I don't,
Hyundai, some of them, they got a 3-pin socket on the back, and you can just
that's
plug in and,
crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
plug all sorts in.
Bring your kettle, your hair straighteners, all of it.
Exactly,
Um,
exactly.
but it's quite interesting to see that this information isn't necessarily getting passed down to the consumer and the people that are actually using the vehicles.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's mainly kind of professionals in the sector like yourself that are having to share it.
And that's
But
that's
you've,
one of the challenges we have because of when the Climate Change Committee wrote the report back in February, I said last year, about the negativity side. A
mhm,
lot of people if you think about it, the media controls the world. So everybody gets their information from the media. A lot of people get it from social media. So if the media and social media want to put a certain slant on it, that's going to sway people's opinions. And the way the media work is they tend to put something maybe negative or controversial up, which will draw clicks, because positive
Hmm.
news doesn't tend to draw clicks so much.
Yeah.
And very often, we'll see a negative news story come up about EVs in whatever, whichever paper. I'm not going to mention any. And, that the industry will come out and challenge that. And then the media will correct it. But before that happens, social media have already picked it up and are running wild with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're in this constant battle all the time. I think one of the things we need is just keep pushing that positive message on one side to say, this is what the positive side of EVs actually brings. This is what they're about. And it's just, we learn often just keep pushing it. And, me speaking to you now, hopefully we'll get those positive messages out there that EVs can bring a lot of benefits to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe on the car sales forecourt, they should sell the vehicles as this is EV and it also charges and powers your barbecue,
Exactly. Yeah.
for
Have a barbecue running
positivity.
off the back, 3 burgers with this car.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, absolutely. But obviously you've worked across EV charging, battery energy storage and renewable energy. So you've done a full mixture of renewables here. How do you see these sectors coming together, even if it's not necessarily to power barbecues?
I think it's an interesting one because people are getting more energy conscious now. The UK has the highest electricity prices in the developed world at the moment. And when the Ukrainian war kicked off and Russia invaded and everything else, the people started putting embargoes on Russia and Russian gas, which drove gas price up. And the problem with the UK is the electricity price is linked to the next highest commodity, which is gas. So when the gas price goes up, the electricity price goes up as well. And that's why we had all the energy spikes and electricity price spikes and everything else going on and all the caps going on. I think as a result of that, people started seriously looking at solar and battery storage to say, how can I bring my energy prices down? What's this solar and everything? And then all of a sudden, Joe Bloggs gets it up the street and he's in the local pub going, yeah, I'm saving a load of money and I'm, generating that. And people start seeing that and they go, oh, hang on a minute. And you get a bit of peer pressure then because the neighbor's done it, you want to do it, and a friend's done it, and somebody's talking about it at work. What you see is solar panels have come massively down in price, from like £1,000 a panel down to about £250 a panel over the last 10 years. So they're very, very cheap to get in at the moment. And there's a lot of companies jumping on that bandwagon. So you start seeing people getting the trio now. So they get the solar panels, the battery storage, and EV charger. Because effectively, if you can generate enough power in that triangle, you can effectively run your car for free almost. Because if you've got enough storage, you can charge your battery, you can charge your night and everything else. And people are starting to get wise at that. I've got cheap motoring here with an EV, and also I can run my house off this solar. And during the day, I've got so much power coming out of my solar, I can run my house. So all of a
Yeah.
sudden, a lot of people are saving money. And again, they're going down the pub and pulling the apps out and going, hey, look how much money I'm saving. Great.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really starting to be a growing industry, particularly the solar and battery storage side is a real growing industry at the moment.
Interestingly enough, I'm actually in the market looking for a house, and I constantly see on adverts for houses comes with solar panels. It will reduce your cost by this much. So it's been integrated into kind of normal day life, and more expensive options that are in the market of purchasing a house. Solar panels and like an EV charger or battery storage are being sold as an added product on, or an added value on the property. So it's being integrated everywhere.
Yeah, I
In
think
terms,
it was interesting. There was a study a few years back that I did a post on it, and somebody studied and said that an EV charger can add £5,000 on your house. If you've got
yeah,
off street parking,
yeah,
and solar and everything else probably the same. Similar sort of amounts or even more. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a long term investment. And again, it's something to think about. The prices are coming down, so get in there quick.
Absolutely. Now you sound like you're selling houses as well as solar. So
And in this room over here.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You mentioned obviously the price increase is massive in the sector for energy, but one area that particularly plays a huge part is policy and government funding. Really shape the pace of change in the sector. Um, what's your thoughts around kind of the speed in terms of policy, government funding, and the kind of challenges that are being faced?
I think it's an interesting debate with the government at the moment. With any new technology, the government has got to try and get people interested as early adopters. So what they'll do is they'll give a grant or something to buy a new car or an EV charger or solar or whatever else. There's various grants in the option at the moment.
Hmm.
Um, and then what you have is the classic S curve of adoption. So, the early adopters, and then we're in that sort of growth phase at the moment, and then you get sort of mass market at the top. I think with EVs is kind of we've done a double bump now, because what happens is once you get the early adopters on board and you start getting a lot of people getting into that growth curve, then they'll withdraw the grants. And normally what
Hmm.
happens then is there's a slowdown in take up and then it carries on. We saw this in Germany when they withdrew the grants for the EVs, and we saw it in the UK when they withdrew the grants a few years ago. Then the industry kind of faltered a little bit for various reasons. It's still going up, but not as quick as it was before. The EV negativity plays a major part in it. You've got people like Trump across the pond who's just sort of anti-EV and anti-renewables. That has a sway on it.
Yeah.
People now focusing more on fossil fuels, BP and Shell on this side of the pond, moving away from renewables. So you're kind of in this little hiatus again. And I think the government recently announced the electric car grants up to 3,750 that they were going to give to new buyers. And everybody went, wow, great. It's going to get the industry going again. But then the government then put a lot of criteria on it saying, it had to be up to 3,750 for eligible EVs in the lower price bracket. And then we have to analyze the sustainability and the environmental impact of the company and blah, blah, blah. So all of a sudden, this grant that everybody thought they were getting for EVs starts getting narrowed down to a very specific few cars. So, yeah, it's great to have another grant, but it's not as big as the industry was hoping for. Um, the other issue we see as well is there's a thing sliding in the background called the ZEV mandate, which is a zero emission vehicle mandate, where the government is forcing, for want of a better word, the manufacturers to make a certain percentage of their car sales each year zero emission BEV for
Hmm.
battery electric vehicles. Last year it was 22%, and we hit 19% against that target. This year it's 28%, and we're struggling to hit that. And gradually it ramps up to 80% by 2030 and 100% by 2035. Um, that was going well, but then the industry pushed back on the government and softened the government then softened the targets a little bit, saying, well, you can make more vehicles at the end, make your vehicles up at the end rather than sort of hitting the targets in between. And
Yeah.
that's caused a little bit of pausing on the industry because people fear change. So they're saying, right, we'll buy our EV nearer 2030 when the bans come in rather than, now in 2025, 26. So you're seeing a little bit of pausing at the moment in the industry as well, which causes a bit of problem. But any help from the government is always appreciated. So it's just a case of keep pushing. A lot of people say, um, you know, when you look at the bigger picture, the reason the government gets involved and the reason why they're pushing EVs is a lot of people feel they're being forced to buy an EV, which isn't the case. Because if you look at the bigger picture, the largest greenhouse gas emitting sector in the UK, for example, is transport at
Yeah.
29%. So that's why the government is trying to move you away from or using fossil fuels, petrol and diesel in cars, which create these greenhouse gas emissions, and trying to move them towards alternatives like electric, hydrogen, biofuels. And for various reasons, electric is winning that race. So it's more of a pull to get people in rather than a push. And the reason the government does that, and everyone says, well, just leave the people to decide. Well, if you do that, people won't do it. And if you look back through history, you could say the introduction to compulsory wearing of seatbelts happened in whenever it was, 1983 for the front and 1991 for the rear. And that forced people, and that ultimately saved lives. Compulsory introduction of speed limits, that saved lives as well. If we left it up to the people, they wouldn't do it. So there's times when the government has to step in to try and force a policy through for the greater good. And this is what we're seeing now, where the government is trying to force EVs through for the greater good to combat climate change and global warming.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The targets that you've mentioned there, in terms of kind of we're edging up to 28%, with the end goal being 100%. Was it by 2030? Um, that seems quite
2035 for
ambitious.
100%. Yeah,
2035.
just a little
That
bit.
does seem quite ambitious for where we are at the moment. Do you think it's achievable? Is it doable? What needs to change to kind of make that happen?
I think it's going to be tough. I think, we had the 22% target last year for 2024. We hit 19.6%. So basically, if a manufacturer is selling their cars, 22%
Hmm.
have to be zero emission electric, and the rest can be oil and gas. And then gradually, the electric side will get bigger and bigger. Oil and diesel will get, petrol and diesel will get smaller and smaller. Um, there's a lot of work got to go on to try and combat that. And that, this isn't just unique to the UK. This is happening in Europe and other
Hmm.
countries as well. So you've got to get over the hurdle of all this negativity against EVs, all this fighting against EVs. I mean,
Yeah.
in 2030, the ban on pure petrol and diesel vehicles comes in the UK, after which it's going to be hybrid vehicles. So your plug-in hybrid electric vehicles and your mild hybrid electric vehicles. And in 2035, all those will be banned as well, and it'll just be EVs going forward.
Yeah.
But you will still have a massive amount of second-hand petrol and diesel vehicles for sale in the second-hand market for a long, long while. Most
Hmm.
people, most people get their new vehicles through lease schemes or through company cars at a very small percentage buying them brand new.
Yeah.
So it's not really going to affect that many people. Most people's first exposure to an EV is through a company car scheme or through a lease scheme.
Yeah.
But it's going to
Absolutely.
be a tall order to get it. Whether the government will move the 2030 date out to 2035, the industry is thinking it may happen. It's kind of getting that way a little bit. All depends on how the
Hmm.
industry reacts to the target this year and whether they're going to hit it or not.
Yeah. And I don't know whether you can kind of bust this myth that seems to be going around the EV industry, but it's predominantly around the batteries of the vehicles. What I know when I was looking at an EV vehicle, which unfortunately I didn't go down the route of, um, battery was a huge consideration for me because it's still quite new technology, and nobody's kind of outwardly stated what will happen with the battery in this amount of time. What's your thoughts around batteries for EV vehicles? Is it a strong area that's stopping people from purchasing them?
Yes. Yeah. I think the problem is that an EV battery is effectively the same as your mobile phone, your laptop, your rechargeable toothbrush, the same composition. The cobalt used in the battery, which is so often linked to the child labor issue in the Democratic Republic of Congo, is also used in the refining process to create petrol and diesel. So there's a lot of links in there. What a lot of people don't realize with the battery is every EV battery comes with at least an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on it. And that is based on a worst case scenario of somebody who abuses the battery to the max.
Mm,
So that's somebody who supercharges it from 0 to 100% and drives everywhere under hard acceleration. Even under that scenario, the battery is guaranteed to have at least 70% capacity left at the end of its life. Most normal drivers will still be 85% plus.
yeah.
The other thing you've got to remember with the battery is a lot of the manufacturers now, because they've got so much real world usage data coming back into them from cars, predict that the battery will now outlast the car itself. And hence what you're seeing is you see a lot of cars going out, EVs going out 200, even 300,000 miles now on the original battery. But you're seeing the circular market opening up, which is taking the old EV batteries to reuse as energy storage devices for maybe a decade or more, feeding, taking the energy from your solar and using that. And then you see, even at the end of that, they're near on 100% fully recyclable to feed back into the production chain at the start again to make new batteries. It's getting that education out about the battery that people are worried about it, but they shouldn't be worried about it. It's got this massive warranty on it. You can pretty much tell if the car's been driven by a lunatic, there'll be signs that all the joints are worn out and there'll be scratches all over it and everything else.
Yeah.
So just the same as when you buy a petrol or diesel car, use your eyeballs, have a look, see what you think of the car.
Yeah, absolutely. I particularly like the fact that it can be repurposed after
Mm.
use of the EV vehicle, which kind of leads the whole topic of discussion here around transformation, specifically in the sector. And you've actually led some very different environments because you originally started in the RAF, went on to Jaguar Land Rover, then to startups predominantly in the renewable space. What's common about driving change in these settings? Is there anything that aligns similarly, and stuff that's completely different at all when it comes to driving transformation?
I think the key thing I've always learned is to get people on board. And one of the things I did in the military is I learned a military style of leadership. So I operate to what they call the 3 T's of leadership. So trust the individual, empower and give them the tools of training to get on with the job. Keep everybody informed. So transparency to keep everyone informed of what's going on. But the third T is tailored to the individual. So the way you respond and I respond and the next person responds to a command will be totally different. But it's understanding the person beyond the 9 to 5. Most people in industry will understand the person in 9 to 5, and if they're underperforming, will start kicking their proverbial, saying you need to work harder. But
Hmm.
failing to appreciate that the person might be suffering a major crisis at home with his wife or his child is ill or a financial worry or anything else. So by understanding the person beyond the 9 to 5, you can understand what makes them tick and how to get the very best from them. And that comes with driving sort of a transformation program through a company or something. It's if
Hmm.
you understand, get to know your people to get them on board and understand what makes them tick, it's easier to get that person to come along with you on that journey to transform the company, drive a green energy transformation program through, and get them to your way of thinking and get them to work with you rather than just going out and saying you are to, you are to. A leader is part of a team, and even though you're kind of spearheading that team, you're nothing without the team behind you. So when the praise comes in, give it to the team. Don't stand up and say, "Hey, I'm the one that did this." No, it's the team that did it as well.
Yeah.
You're a team in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to transforming the sector and the out view of the a kind of end user or customer base, how do you do that as a collective if the media from the government's coming negatively across social media? How do you drive change transformationally when it's a couple of million people that you need to kind of persuade?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I speak at various conferences. I've spoken at various conferences in the past, and there's various ones on my profile. If anyone has to look, you'll see a lot of featured ones. And it's just repetition. It just keeps getting the industry out there. What we're seeing now with the industry is you get a lot of negativity, and people are very ready to accept a negative viewpoint or one that's incorrect. But when you tell them the truth, they want to see chapter and verse and every
Hmm.
document possible before they'll believe you. And even
Yeah,
when you prove them wrong, they'll say, well, you're in the industry and you're just trying to protect your own interests. Well, no, it's kind of, this is the truth. This is what's going on.
yeah.
And on LinkedIn, I'll get trolls coming in and what about, you have a thing called whataboutery. They'll sit there and they'll go, what about this? And they'll pull a report up from 20 years ago and you say, that's extinct now. Oh, what
Hmm.
about this? What about that? And you play whack-a-mole, you keep battering each one down.
Yeah.
And, every time they comment, it's great because they're elevating your post up through the LinkedIn algorithms.
Hmm.
But it's just keep going and trying to get people out there, get them to experience EVs. And as I said earlier, once people get into EVs, 95% of them don't want to go back into petrol or diesel vehicles. They're
Yeah.
in the EV arena. They've realized the benefits it can bring and they're happy with it and they want to stay there.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, here's hoping that the industry will move forward on just through LinkedIn connections on its own, if it's your network driving it. But finally, last question from me: what's the one challenge that kind of still keeps you up at night when you think about the industry's future?
I think if I look at both the EV side and the renewable side, I think it's the misinformation that's out there. Um, that is very, very difficult. And I still get people now. talking to me and saying, I'll never get an EV because the batteries are always exploding, or they're collapsing car parks, or they're damaging the roads. And you're going, well, how can they damage the roads? Because you've got lorries and buses and vans that are a lot bigger than
Mm-hmm.
EVs that do it. And people say things that don't make sense. Um, and that is a continual battle that goes through. I mean, I've got over 19,500 followers on LinkedIn. And they seem to like what I do and what I say and what I write, and they follow me for it. And it's that it doesn't keep me up at night, but it's kind of a niggling sort of thing that we've just got to keep channeling this positive message out there. And likewise with solar, people come up with horror stories that solar panels can't be recycled and they're buried in the ground and they'll damage your house and the battery will explode outside on your drive.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. So it's just keep pushing that, the truthful message, the truth that's out there. Do away with all the myths and the misinformation and just push the positive message. And
Mm.
slowly you start getting through. As we say, EV sales are going up year on year. Solar sales are starting to get good. The renewable energy side is growing year on year because prices are coming down.
Yeah.
So in the background, things are going in the right direction. We just need to keep positive and keep pushing it.
Yeah. It's almost you just want the media to scream about how positive it is to draw
Yeah, but
attention less
a
than
good news story doesn't draw clicks, but a negative news story, and you see it almost every day. There's a negative news story somewhere in the media. And you're
Yeah.
like, where does this come from? And you look at it, and I'm in various WhatsApp groups with the industry professionals and that, and we just think, where does the thinking come on? How do you think that a battery collapses a car park, and this sort of stuff? And it just doesn't make
Yeah.
sense. But yeah,
Yeah.
you got to keep going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Randall, thank you so much for sharing your insights and providing your time. It's been absolutely fascinating to have you on here, hearing your experience and how EVs and renewables and storage are converging and what that means for the future of energy. So really appreciate your time there.
Hey, thank you so much, man. It's been a great privilege and an honor to be here. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. And for everyone listening, if you enjoyed this episode, give it a quick share with your network, subscribe for more conversations with the people that are driving the energy transition. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Thanks for now, guys.